a copy, but please help me welcome Pastor Philip Allen tonight.
That was very kind. Thank you. I resist being called pastor now, because I'm not. I walked away, and I had to. But first, I want to say just, Pastor Jeff, Pastor Josh, thank you so much for inviting me, letting me be here. This is incredibly supportive and generous of you. For some of you, you may recognize there's kind of a miracle happening here. The miracle is that Pastor Jeff and Pastor Josh are actually really, really familiar with my preaching, and they invited me. And that's either the movement of God or a profound lack of discernment. I'm gonna let you guys decide that. But many of you know me, and like Pastor Josh said, I was on staff here a few years ago, and then I wasn't. And I hope that you know that I was not angry at you. I wasn't disappointed in you. I wasn't hurt by you. I was just at a spot where, honestly, I was tired of pretending I'm fine when I wasn't. And to settle that for myself, figure things out, I had to walk away from church ministry. It was an incredibly difficult, confusing, painful time for me. And the book grew out of that. The book was not a book. When it started, it was just me trying to figure out, how do I talk to God anymore? I didn't know what to say to him. I wasn't positive he was there. I wasn't sure he cared. And I realized that I didn't know how to talk to him in a spot like that. Talk to him in a way that's not just complaining, that's something more than that. But before we get into that, embarrassingly enough, though, the journey leading to the book actually started out with a gas grill. And the thing that you have to know to understand this is I'm not handy. I'm not good with tools. Well, what is that? You must know me. You know, when my wife and I were here on staff during COVID, and, we would clear the chairs out of here to set up a place where we could video the service, and they wouldn't even let me take the chairs apart. Like, you have to lift one out of the other. There's a mechanism. I don't get it. And so I'm terrible at it. And I have a great friend who is really good at anything with his hands. And he said, Phil, I got you. I'll meet you Saturday morning. We'll put it together. We'll be done by lunch, no problem. So Friday night he called and he said, Phil, I can't make it, but you can handle this. We are no longer friends because friends don't just lie to friends. You should never do that. And he said, just take the stuff out, spread it out, follow the directions, you'll be fine. So Saturday morning I went out. It's supposed to be one of those Saturday projects that you get done and you feel like you're actually kind of a productive human being. Like, hey, I can do stuff every now and then. So I'd go out and rake the lawn. I'd be like, see, I got this. No problem. And it's supposed to be that kind of project. And man, that thing just made me regret every life decision I made that led me to that patio with that box. Because I got it out and I hit this point. I'm not exaggerating. It was hot. I hate hot. I hit a spot where I was on the back patio, stuff spread around, sweating, surrounded by bolts, holding this manual. It was written by somebody on their lunch break. It just made no sense whatsoever. And this is God's truth. I started to cry. Literally cry. And not just like, oh, I feel bad. I mean, like actual tears, and it just felt like I thought they're thinking, man, I am at the top of my game here. This is the best version of Phil, sitting here crying over this grill. And most of you know it wasn't the grill. It was, but it was life. And the grill was just kind of the final straw. And I remember sitting there looking at the grill and thinking, is life supposed to just hurt? Is that what this is? Is there supposed to just be this kind of pain? Because you've probably had your own grill story. Maybe it's a traffic jam or a dishwasher leak or somebody chewing loudly. I don't know, but it's that thing that just sets you over the edge. It's not just that thing, but it's everything that built up to it. And what I want to do today with you is I want to use the story in Luke 24 of the two disciples walking to Emmaus after Jesus has been resurrected. And I want you to think with me about what Jesus does here and what this really means, because it's a fascinating interaction that he has. And so we're going to break it into chunks. I'm just going to read a chunk. We're going to talk about that chunk. And so I want to start out reading verses 13 to 16. It says, now that same day, okay, what same day? It's the day of the resurrection. It's the morning, but we don't know what time, but it's the day of the resurrection. The stone has been rolled away, the tomb's empty. Now that same day, two of them, the disciples, were going to a village called Emmaus, about 7 miles from Jerusalem. They were talking with each other about everything that had happened. As they talked and discussed these things with each other, Jesus himself came up and walked among with them, but they were kept from recognizing him. So if you think about this setting, right, these are two of Jesus' followers. And Jesus has been crucified. They've watched that. He's died. He was buried. And then the morning of the resurrection, these two guys are walking away. They're walking home. And in order to really understand what's going on here, you have to get a picture of what these two guys are feeling, what's going on in their heart and their mind, because they are hurt. They're confused. They are, as they walk along to Emmaus, they're retreating. They're going home. And they've heard the story. Just think about this. These guys followed him. They walked with him, and that morning, they heard the story of the open and empty tomb. The women told them that. They knew it had happened. And you have to pause here and just imagine the exhaustion and the discouragement that these two guys must feel to hear that and go, yeah, no, I got nothing left. I can't. I don't know what that is. I don't know why the tomb's empty. I don't know what happened, but I can't. Now, you may doubt that that's what they're thinking and what they're feeling, but you're going to see in a few minutes that that is what they're thinking and feeling because they say it. Imagine being so discouraged that you hear about the empty tomb, you hear about the stone being rolled away, and you just think, no, I'm going to go. And there's a really weird, don't worry, we're not going to get involved in language, but there's a very interesting little linguistic thing here that it says they were kept from recognizing him. It's in the passive voice. It means something outside of them kept them from recognizing who he is. And I want you to have in the back of your mind the question of why. Why, as we go on, were they kept from recognizing him at first? And so then we're going to read 17 to 24, right? Because Jesus walks up. They don't recognize them. He asks them, what are you guys talking about? What are you discussing together as you walk along? Now, picture them, because this gives you an emotional insight. They stood still, their faces downcast. In other words, they're standing there. They don't have questions. They don't want to know about the empty tomb or the stone rolled away or where is the body or where is Jesus or what does that mean. They're looking down and it's like they're standing there with their hands in their pockets going, man. And one of them named Cleopas asks him, are you the only one visiting Jerusalem who doesn't know about all this stuff? And Jesus says, what things? And they reply, about Jesus of Nazareth. He was a prophet, powerful in word and deed before God and all the people. The chief priests and our rulers handed him over to be sentenced to death, and they crucified him. And then listen to these words. But we had hoped. We had hoped. There was a time that we hoped. There was a time we thought there was more, but we had hoped that he was the one who was going to redeem Israel. And what's more, it's the third day since all this took place. And then they tell him, in addition, some of our women amazed us. They went to the tomb early this morning. They didn't find his body. They came and told us they'd seen a vision of angels who said he was alive. And then some of our companions went to the tomb, and they found it just as the women had said. But they did not see Jesus. And still they walk away. Still they're standing there, face downcast. Still they have hope in the past tense, but we had hoped. Jesus is really intentional how he does this, and notice it. Because he allows space for their grief before he reveals who he is. He allows space for their grief before he reveals who there is. He invites their story. He says, hey guys, what are you talking about? Before he teaches, he listens. And he pays attention to that pain they're feeling. Even though there's really no reason for them to be feeling it. He pays attention to the pain they're feeling, even though there's really no reason for them to be feeling it. Jesus is risen. The women saw a vision. The tomb's empty. We had hoped. Does that echo for you? Because, I think there's this thing that if we would just get deeply honest, post-Eden, there's joy in life. And that joy in life is kind of braided with sorrow. There's pain in being human. A fading friendship, a lost job, a dream that now isn't going to happen. I was sitting with an aging woman, and she was just talking about all of these little daily losses that she's experiencing. She was talking about how she can't drive anymore. Cooking is hard. She has a hard time remembering, and she's just running through these things that hurt. And then she stopped, and she looked at me, and she said, no. Other people have it so much worse. And so I paused for a second, and I said, does that make you feel better to say other people have it worse? And I knew her well enough to know she's going to think about that, and she's going to answer me honestly. And so she looked down for a minute, and then she looked up, and there were tears in her eyes. And she said, "No, now I just feel guilty and sad." You know, guilt and grief don't sit well together. It's a terrible combination. God didn't invent the suffering Olympics, where you have to have the worst case of pain for your pain to matter. And one of the things that I want to say, and I know this is confrontational, and I know some of you will receive it and some of you won't. We as Christians, we love to downgrade our feelings. And I really feel like lots of us should get medals for minimizing. That's what she did. She has real pain about real things. And she's expressing that pain. And then she says, I don't feel like I'm supposed to say that. I don't feel like I'm supposed to acknowledge that that just hurts. And so she cushions it with this thing that so many of us have said, where she says, other people have it worse. But then she's honest enough to say, honestly, that just makes me feel guilty. And this is something I just want you to know. If you have a pain in you today that's huge or is tiny, if it's weighing on your soul, God cares. It doesn't matter how big it is. It doesn't matter how little it is. There's not a certain level that you have to reach where suddenly it matters to God. It matters to God if it bothers you. Those things that we're taught are too small to name matter. And I want you to know that just fundamentally and profoundly about God, because that's not just what He chooses to do, that's who He is. It's by His nature and His character that He looks on you with compassion. Day in and day out, your best day, your worst day, and the day you struggle with the doggone grill. And so Jesus turns to them, and we misread this. Verse 25, it sounds so horrible to us. He says to them, how foolish you are, and how slow to believe all the prophets have spoken. Man, that feels harsh in English, doesn't it? How foolish you are, and how slow to believe. But if you go back to what words he's using in Greek, these are actually two diagnostic words. In other words, he's saying to them, this is where you are. And that word foolish, it means spiritual dullness, not moral failure. And what it really means is it just means you're without understanding. And all Jesus is saying to them is that they see things, they're seeing things wrong. They're looking through the wrong lens, but that can be healed. That's what Jesus means by foolish. And when he says slow of heart, it means sluggish, not stubborn. It's hesitant. It's not hard-hearted. And what it really is Jesus pointing out to these guys that if they were to answer him about the open tomb, about the stone rolled away, they would say something like, I'm just too tired. I'm just too disappointed. I don't know what hope even looks like anymore. Because I was following this guy, and it seemed like it was him, and he did all kinds of weird stuff that I don't get. And then he died. And yeah, the tomb's empty and the stone's rolled away and some women had a vision and I'm just tired. And I don't know if you guys have ever felt that, where you're just in that spot where you're just tired. And so then Jesus goes on in verses 26 and 27. He says, did not the Messiah have to suffer these things and then enter his glory? And beginning with Moses and all the prophets, he explained to them what was said in all the scriptures concerning himself. So what does Jesus do with them? When they lay this out and they say, Jesus, I'm tired. Except they don't know it's Jesus, so they wouldn't have said that. But when they're asking him, he says, I'm tired. What does Jesus say to them? Does he say, hey guys, it's me. Woo, look, everything's fine. No, he goes through scripture, and what he does is he reweaves the story they're telling themselves. That he takes the reality of their pain and he sets it in this arc of God's story. And he says, you just have to understand the arc of what's happening here. And what Jesus is doing is he's rebuilding their hope. But he's rebuilding their hope on something firmer than just a fast fix. He's giving them more than just a fast fix. Jesus wants to do more for them than fix this moment. Why? Because it's going to get hard again. And he's giving them tools to deal with the pain and the uncertainty and the loss that is simply part of life in a fallen world. And so then he goes on, 28 through 31. As they approached the village to which they were going, Jesus continued on as if he were going further. I'm not sure why I love that line, but I just feel like Jesus is teasing them. And they say, hey, stay with us. It's nearly evening. The day's almost over. So he went in to stay with them. When he was at the table with them, he took bread, gave thanks, broke it, and began to give it to them. Then their eyes were opened, and they recognized him, and he disappeared from their sight. When does Jesus reveal himself? It's not right away. It's not to give them an easy answer. It's not even in the midst of the teaching. It's in this moment of communion. It's in that moment of ordinary connection with him that their eyes are opened. And that's one of the themes in the book, is this idea that what if the everyday pain we feel, I don't mean the big stuff too, but we're better with that. What if the everyday pain we feel is actually it's an invitation from God to draw near? What if the pain we minimize, the pain we explain away, the pain we shove under the carpet, what if in that God is saying, come close to me with that. Talk to me about that. Let me come into that space with you. Sin introduced pain into the world. But as only God can do, he turned pain into an opportunity for intimacy. And for most of us, it's an opportunity we miss because we minimize. And because we're not honest about it hurting when we lose a job, or a friendship breaks, or somebody says something dumb, or whatever it happens to be. And so it's fascinating to me that Jesus here breaks bread with them. They recognize him. And then what? He's gone. He literally just disappears. Now, I read that, and being me, I go, really? After all that, this is what you do? You don't say, guys, I'm so glad you're coming around. I'm so glad that you're going to be back. Let me walk back with you. He just disappears, pops out of the scene. I mean, I feel like at least he could have given him a ride back or something. But I think there's actually a message in him disappearing too. And the message is, this whole thing of following me might not be what you expect. It might not all play out the way you think it's going to go. There might be painful moments, but I want you close to me. And so starting in verse 32, they say, were not our hearts burning within us while he talked with us on the road and opened scriptures? They got up and returned at once to Jerusalem. There they found the 11 and those with them assembled together and saying, it's true, the Lord has risen and he has appeared to Simon. And then the two told what had happened to them on the way and how Jesus was recognized by them when he broke the bread. Were not our hearts burning within us? In that moment, just put yourself in that moment. In that moment, the pain isn't erased in them. They still don't get it, but their hearts are burning. Something is being rekindled. And I think that's often what God wants to do with us in the midst of us. And Jesus uses this disappointment. He uses this pain. He uses this uncertainty to say, come to me. And that's really the heart of the book. And all the while I was writing it, I kept having this image of a child with a skinned knee and a parent kneeling down in front of them and saying, hey, let me see that. Let me see that. I think probably every one of you have felt that, and probably every one of you have had the parent that said, hey, let me take a look. And the parent doesn't fix it. They don't heal it. They can't make it immediately better. But there's just something about letting them into it. And my invitation to you, I think God's invitation to you, is to take the reality of what you feel and let it be an invitation to the God who's saying, hey, let me see that. Let me see your discouragement. Let me see your hurt. Let me see your discomfort. Let me see what you're wondering about. And I hope that in the deepest sense, the book is an invitation to do that. An invitation to be honest. To say, there are things in my life that hurt, and I tend to just pretend they don't hurt, but they do hurt. And an invitation to take those things to God. Now, like Pastor Josh said, conveniently, I have books. And I want to do this as a free will offering. And I want to give you two things I want you not to do. Please don't. Now, this is bad because it's a double negative. Please don't not take the book because of money. I have ways back there if you want to give toward the expenses of it. I love that. But please don't not take the book because of money. If anything in this resonates with you at all, or if you're sitting there and someone else has come to mind and you're thinking, man, I don't know, maybe it'd be good for them, please take it. I wrote it to get to people who need it. And the other thing, having been a pastor for a long time, is please don't give money toward the book instead of giving it to church. Give the money you were going to give to church. If there's some left over and you feel led to give it, that's great. Please do take it if you want it. Some of you are probably thinking, and it's totally fine, I don't know, I don't think that's for me. And that's totally fine. But if you feel like, I wonder if there's an invitation in that for me, then please take it. And if it resonates at all with you, I just ask you to share it. Maybe give it to somebody, tell them about it, whatever works for you. There are some free little bookmarks that I printed that are incredibly unprofessional looking. But on the back, I'm going to confess to you, there are two of the little things you can scan with your phone. What's that called? QR code. There are two little QR codes. One of them is very embarrassingly will take you to the review page on Amazon. Gosh, I hate this. The only way Amazon will show it to people is if there are reviews. If you feel led, great. If you don't, that's fine. The other, it will take you to a little weekly devotional I write that if you're interested, you're very welcome to join. But the main thing is, hear this. Everything you feel matters to God. It doesn't mean every emotion is absolutely rooted in truth, but it means you feel it. And the fact that you feel it matters to Him. And His response to your feeling it is, hey, let me see that. Let me walk with you in that. Because He actually, unlike my dad, can heal the knee. He can heal the wound. He can soothe the hurt. So just be honest and take it to Him. And I would appreciate it if you'd pray with me. Jesus, it is such a pleasure to be back here. If you would have told me 4 years ago I'd be doing this, I would have laughed. But instead it's you laughing because you are so good, you're so loving, and you care so deeply. And God, I feel like sometimes I minimize the things that hurt and I turn away from you in them by shoving them under the carpet. When you're standing there with compassion going, Phil, I know that hurts. Is it the worst pain in the world? No, but it's your pain. And you're inviting me toward you. And I am so profoundly grateful for that. And if there are a few people that you invite toward you in the same way, I'm grateful for that. God, help us just to be honest with you and to show you what hurts. In Jesus' name, amen. Thank you so much for being here, for bearing with me. I hope you have a great night. It was great to see you guys again. And I think you can leave.